नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रसाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी प्रशात देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर भक्ति सिद्धांत स्वयं महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर नदी धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा मई जमुना मई की जय। तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Always Shiva and Gauranga.
Jai Jai, thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Monday, April 28th, 2025 in New York. Today we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 13, text number 47. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And if you'd like to read and comment today, please put a note in the chat so that we have options. And thank you, Prabhu Krishna Prabhu, for posting the verses. Text 47. Evang sanirvinna manan ripo grihan nishitha uthaya mahodayodayat alabhanidro nupalakshito nribhir hitvagato vena suvang prasuptam. Thinking like that, King Anga could not sleep at night. He became completely indifferent to household life. Once, therefore, in the dead of night, he got up from bed and left Vena's mother, his wife, who was sleeping deeply. He gave up all attraction for his greatly opulent kingdom, and unseen by anyone, he very silently gave up his home and opulence and proceeded towards the forest. In this verse, the word Mahodayodayat indicates that by the blessings of a great soul, one becomes materially opulent, but when one gives up attachment to material wealth, that should be considered an even greater blessing from the great souls. It was not a very easy task for the king to give up his opulent kingdom and young faithful wife, but it was certainly a great blessing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he could give up the attachment and go out to the forest without being seen by anyone. There are many instances of great souls leaving home in this way in the dead of night, giving up attachment for home, wife, and money. Om Jnanati Mirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. From reading this verse and purport, the image came to me of someone with a headache or someone with some inflammation, some infection in the body that is indicative of something going wrong and the body's attempt to heal itself. Here, the king can't sleep at night because he's got such a lousy son. He has no peace in his mind. And because he's a devotee, this gives him especially a lot of pain. And here we're hearing that it reaches such a point that he decides leaving is better than staying. And Srila Vishwanath's commentary on this, he also singles out this word, Mahodayodayat, which sounds really nice. And it refers to the wealth and the security of the king's home and how he just left it behind. And people do not leave things behind unless they're convinced they're getting something better as a result of that. Also, I thought it should be considered an even greater blessing from the great souls to be able to give up one's material opulence, pondering how it's a lot easier to acquire things than it is to get rid of them. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you if you have some comments here.
Thank you, Kendra. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtita Deshatani. I'm reminded that His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj followed this pattern, as I recall. He just, walked out in the middle of the night, as I recall. And Prabhupada followed a similar pattern. Really, he just was gone. And we remember that not walking out on householder life, but this is what a similar pattern was followed by Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. They didn't talk to Sanjay and say, well, Sanjay, here's what we're thinking. What's your opinion? And, sort of put their finger up in the air and wait for someone to dissuade them. They reached a firm determination and left. That's the pattern followed by the great souls. It's significant that, well, I talk about this in my book, that this is one way of entering the Vanaprastha ashram, to just be so exasperated with family life, and it's, so exasperated with it that one leaves, that's all. There's a sort of need and congenial way of where the husband and wife discuss, and they have a plan, and everything is mutually agreed, and everybody's on board. That's very nice. Archie and Prithu, we'll find in the coming chapters, left home for the forest with a mutual purpose, a shared purpose. But it's not always like that. Sometimes just for the higher cause of self-realization or higher cause of devotional service to Krishna, one may simply leave. And that's what happened here. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, it's interesting how King just left everything because he had so much things going for him, like
so many things going for him, and many responsibilities also.
Yes, many responsibilities. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Maharaj.
Yeah, in spite of all, he had a kingdom, he had so many advantages, and he had so many people depending on him, looking toward him for guidance and shelter. We'll find that in the coming verses. But he just took the decision that this is a higher purpose, higher need, and he left. So Raghunath Das Goswami is another example.
Yes.
He, for a certain time, he dutifully performed his household engagements.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, hey,
Yeah, he acted externally just like a pound, shilling, and pence man, but finally enough. And he found some way by the grace of Nityananda Prabhu.
Yes.
And was gone.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Another example here from Prabhin Krishna Prabhu is Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. Other examples of leaving in the dead of night. He also offers Yodushtya Jandara Sutan Suhridrajam Hridisprishaha Jaho Yuvaiva Malavad Uttama Shloka Lala Saha. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is offered sublime poetic prayers by those trying to attain his favor. Thus he is known as Uttama Shloka. Being very eager to gain the association of Lord Krishna, King Bharat, although in the prime of youth, gave up his very attractive wife, affectionate children, most beloved friends, and opulent kingdom, exactly as one gives up stool after excreting it.
Yeah, Bharat Maharaj is a great example. Yes.
Hare Krishna. So text 28.
You want me to go ahead?
Yes,
take
would
it
you
forward?
text 48? Yes, please.
Okay. Number 48.
Nice.
Vignaya nirvidha gatam patim prajaha purohitamya matya shrudha grundya vichikyara vruyam atishloka katara yatha nigudam purusham kuyoginah. When it was understood that the king had indifferently left home, all the citizens, priests, ministers, friends, and people in general were greatly aggrieved. They began to search for him all over the world, just as a less experienced mystic searches out the super soul within himself. The example of searching for the super soul within the heart by the less intelligent mystic is very instructive. The absolute truth is understood in three different features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality Godhead. Such Kuyoginah, or less intelligent mystics, can, by mental speculation, reach the point of the impersonal Brahman, but they cannot find the super soul, who is situating within each living entity. When the king left, it was certain that he was staying somewhere else, but because the citizen did not know how to find him, they were frustrated like the less intelligent mystics. So here in purport, the super soul, Krishna could be found in three different ways, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality Godhead. So the comparison is given here that the citizen didn't know how to find the super soul in its proper form, like in its Bhagavan form, Supreme Personality Godhead. They search here, they search there, but they fail to search in a very intelligent way. So the analogy is given that this way for us to not to look for Krishna in impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma, but to find him as a Bhagavan, one who possesses all six opulence in full. And what else? Yeah. So you can imagine they were all looking. All the citizens were all looking for him, and he couldn't be found. Could not be found. I don't know where he was hiding, but certainly they couldn't able to find him. Maharaj.
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells us where he was hiding. The example of the yogis searching for the hidden Paramatma indicates that on that day, the king remained secretly somewhere in his own city.
Oh.
So that's where he was, but then presumably he headed further out. It's notable how the citizens were so keen to find the king. Not that they said, "Great, the king's gone, now we can party." We'll find in the coming verses how keenly they felt the absence of the king. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It occurred to me when I was reading Srila Vishwanath's commentary that when it said kuyogina, that means that it struck me that it's not that he's saying that mystic yogis in general are less intelligent, but just as the super soul is present, indubitably present, he's hiding in plain sight. You go looking, and he's right there. Like the king was right there. Anyway, Maheshji, would you like to close out the chapter and then we can start a new one?
Sure, yeah. Okay.
Saraswati Mata, before you start, Prabhu has a comment on this. She says, Pranams Param Puja Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. I can just imagine the panic set in with citizens because they knew who the alternative ruler would be.
Well, maybe some of them, but as we'll find in the coming verse, that what first distressed them was simply that they'd lost their king. Well, let's see how that unfolds.
Okay. Number 49. Oh, 49, yes. Alakshayantah padvim prajapate hartodhyama prutsyu patsusya te purim rushina sametana brivanda shasravo yavedayan paurava bhartu vipalvavam. When the citizen could not find any trace of the king after searching for him everywhere, they were very disappointed, and they returned to the city, where all the great sages of the country assembled because of the king's absence. With tears in their eyes, the citizen offered respectful obeisances and informed the sages in full detail that they were unable to find the king anywhere. Somehow, all the great sages came in there after the king left. But like Maharaj said, as Vishwanath Thakur pointed out, that the king was hiding in his own city. And all the citizens here says they were all out somewhere searching for him. And they all came in, returned to the city. Thus, in the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 4th canto, 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description of the Descendant of Dhruv Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
From this verse, we find that first of all, they searched for the king everywhere. And when they returned to the city, disappointed, sa'ashrava, they had tears in their eyes because artra viplavam, Partra means master, lord, protector, maintainer. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhuta Partra Maheshwaram Paramad Eti Chapyukta. Krishna identifies himself as Partra. So here, Partra, our protector, has left. I think that's one title for the King of England, also King Protector, something like that. And in any case, that's the role of the king. He protects the citizens, he maintains the citizens, he assures the citizens of safety and security, like a father. Like a father to the citizens. That's the position of the real king. And in the absence of the king, imagine your father just leaves in the middle of the night and you don't know where he's gone. A child, how distressed he would be. Where's daddy? What's happened?
Right.
So the citizens are like that. They feel helpless or unprotected or insecure, lost without the king. What is that? Prabhupada gives the example. He's explaining that verse. Bhavantamevanu Churan Nirantura Sanata Jivitam. A person who's under the protection of the Supreme Lord is described as Sanat, a person who has a Lord. Prabhupada gives the example of a dog. If a dog has an owner, he's a happy dog. But if there's no owner, then the dog is on his own and he's has to fend for himself, and who knows what difficulties he'll go through. So this is the position of the actual king. He's not a despot who has to always assert his authority through coercion. But he's loved by the citizens because he cares for them like a father and is concerned to see that they have no difficulty, that everything they need is provided, that they're safe, that they're prosperous. This is the kind of kings that we find in the Vedic culture. It's not that Prabhupada, when he says there should be monarchy, means that there should be modern, degraded, despotic, tyrannical regimes. But it means just see what kind of king they had, that the citizens in his absence felt so much loss. Let me see if that's someone is really banging here. Anyway, let me stop here and I'll also see about the banging. Hare Krishna.
Jai Maharaj, Radhesha Prabhu says, although Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma are always ready to help the demigods headed by Indra, we have no reason to be afraid of them. As far as Lord Vishnu is concerned, he has already hidden himself within the hearts of all living entities, and he cannot come out. This is a quote from Hiranyakashipu, if I'm correct.
Kamsa's advisors. I was just thinking about the last purport. You know, the super soul is very difficult to find, and then there are those who are happy about that. Never mind difficult to find. He can't come out anyway.
Yeah. Hi, Krishna. Would you like to read our first text of chapter 14, the story of King Vena?
I see Panchatattva Prabhu there. I was hoping to defer to his presence.
He is deferring to your presence because he cannot read since he is driving.
Aha. Okay, so what's the chapter? I'm sorry.
4:14:1.
4:14:1. Let me just pull it up in my book. Sorry.
While you're doing that, Praveen Krishna Prabhu asks, he quotes first, great sages of the country. He says, does it mean that the sages would belong to a particular kingdom?
Sages are independent. But the kingdom might be blessed by the presence of great sages within the realm. But they're not the property of the king or the kingdom. They're independent.
All right, Krishna.
All right. Text 1. Maitreya Uvacha Bhrigvadayaste Munayo Lokanam Kshemadharshinaha Goptaryasati Vai Nirnam Pashyanta Pashusamyatam. The great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero Vidura, the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anga, there was no one to protect the interests of the people, they understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non-regulated. In this verse, the significant word is Kshemadharshinaha, which refers to those who are always looking after the welfare of the people in general. All the great sages, headed by Bhrigu, were always thinking of how to elevate all the people of the universe to the spiritual platform. Indeed, they advised the kings of every planet to rule the people with that ultimate goal of life in mind. The great sages used to advise the head of the state or the king, and he used to rule the populace in accordance with their instruction. After the disappearance of King Anga, there was no one to follow the instructions of the great sages. Consequently, all the citizens became unruly, so much so that they could be compared to animals. As described in Bhagavad Gita, human society must be divided into 4 orders, according to quality and work. In every society, there must be an intelligent class, administrative class, productive class, and worker class. In modern democracy, these scientific divisions are turned topsy-turvy, and by vote, Shudras, or workers, are chosen for administrative posts. Having no knowledge of the ultimate goal of life, such persons whimsically enact laws without knowledge of life's purpose. The result is that no one is happy. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Guru Dasa Jayadvaita Swami Niti Namini. Great sages headed by Bhrigu. Among Munis, Krishna says he is Bhrigu, and they had Lokanam Kshemadharshina, just like the 6 Goswamis, Lokanam Hitakarana. The devotees are always interested in everyone's welfare, not just in their personal welfare or me and mine, my family's welfare at the cost of others' welfare. With Krishna at the center, then it's possible for the entire society to be guided for everyone's benefit. Otherwise, Pashu Sangyatam, its existence on the level of the animals, where might makes right, or whatever little phrase you want to use, money makes right, power makes right, something is defining one person's priority over another's. And with the Vedic system, or with the laws of Manu in place, the sage's opinion holds the most sway, because they're not interested in personal welfare, nor do they have any stake in the game. When Chanakya Pandit, when his opinion was not accepted, then okay, then I'm out of here. They don't have their welfare isn't contingent upon the king's good graces. They're simply offering advice for the benefit of everyone. If you're a ruler, but you have some stake in the game, if your finances are at stake with your ruling, then you're not the right person to rule, because you're going to rule with some self-interest. You'll play the game for follow the money trail. Often you'll see where the corruption lies in government. So for those who actually have the welfare of all the citizens in mind, then they're suitable to give advice to the king. And so Kshemadharshinaha, those who are always looking for how to elevate people, not just on terms of material happiness and welfare, but specifically to uplift the universe to the spiritual platform, Srila Prabhupada says. And that means keeping, according to Bhagavad Gita 4:13, it means that the Lord has established these social orders and ashramas in such a way to create peace in society. And one could say both materially as well. Spiritually, of course, is the ultimate purpose, but even for their material well-being, these social orders are put into place. And I remember in one class some time ago, you had mentioned, Guru Maharaj, that even for all of our egalitarian view in our democratic society, you'll see the four orders still in place. Still, there's going to be someone who's teaching. Still, there's someone going to be working for others. Still, there's going to be a mercantile class. So all the classes are still there, but we pretend that there's no hierarchy when there's a very clearly defined hierarchy. And just unfortunately, those who are in the administrative rule aren't qualified to be there because they're Shudras, and therefore society is topsy-turvy. All right. Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj, if you have something.
One thing is, after this disappearance of King Anga, there was no one to follow the instructions of the great sages. The sages, their role is to advise, to give vision, how things should be done, for what purpose, and so on. So if there's no one to advise, then what happens? The head directs the arms, the legs, and so on. But if there are no arms to direct, how do the sages achieve what they see needs to be done? They don't do it. It's not their duty to punish the thieves, to manage the kingdom. That's not their work. That's why the sages, who was it? It came to Dasarath Maharaj, we want your son to help us. He was so powerful, he could have done everything by his own mystic potency.
Vishwamitra Rishi.
Vishwamitra Muni, yes, thank you. He could have done everything, but instead he approached Dasarath Maharaj that, Your Majesty, we're in need of Kshatriya intervention. So it's so the sections are meant to work together. The parts of the body are meant to work together. The sages are meant to direct the king. They don't take charge of the kingdom. They remain aloof. They remain neutral. That's their duty, because they have to have peaceful minds. They have to have, yes, neutrality. But there has to be a king there so that the sages will advise the king, and then the king will say, okay, I'm on it. I'm on it. Even in a corporation, there's a board of directors. They give the vision where the corporation should go. And then there's a chief executive officer and his management team that do it. The managerial board, board of directors, they don't run the corporation day to day. They give, okay, we should, strategy, the direction. And then there has to be a management team to do it. If there's no management team, what's the use of all these highly qualified directors? That's typically the structure in big companies. They have directors who are the heads of banks and the heads of other corporations, and very capable people, and they get together and they examine where the corporation's going, and they set the direction for the management team for the next quarter or whatever it may be. But if there is no management team, what happens to the company? How can it function? The workers are going to do everything on their own. So the role of the executive head of state, the king, is crucial. I've seen practically that in a state where executive power essentially collapsed, as described here, people became like animals. They became like animals, that you're treating one another like with the highest degree of cruelty. And even now, there's no safety, there's no security. Everything is a mess because the government is weak. It went from being strong, perhaps oppressive, to being useless. So that happened, and the king is what is that? He maintains discipline in the state, and because he does that, things work. So now, no king, and the citizens, innocent citizens, have no one to protect them, no one to see to their welfare. And so without someone taking charge, the sages understood that people will become unregulated, they'll become animalistic, they'll become horrible, and the whole kingdom will suffer. So Kshema Darshana, they're sincerely the well-wisher, as we heard, the well-wishers of the citizens. And Vishwanath Chakravarti comments, as wolves or jackals kill sheep, criminals would kill the citizens. That's what it would come to. With the absence of law and order, you have criminality taking charge. And then the citizens are always in fear. They can be plundered. Everything can happen to them. And we've seen it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Grim indeed. Saraswati Mata, are you available to read a couple of verses here?
Text 2. Virmatram ahuya sunitam brahma vadinaha prakriti asamatam vinam abhyashinchanpatim bhuvaha. Translation: the great sages then called for the Queen Mother Sunita, and with her permission they installed Vina on the throne as master of the world. All the ministers, however, disagreed with this. Maharaj, if you'd like to say something.
Yes, it appears that although the sages were learned in so many ways, the ministers were on the ground, and they anticipated what would happen if Vena were enthroned. Hare Krishna.
Text 3. Shrutva nripashana gatam vena matya gru sashanam nilyurdashyava sadayah sarpatrashta ivakavaha. Translation: it was already known that Vena was very severe and cruel. Therefore, as soon as all the thieves and rogues in the state heard of his ascendance to the royal throne, they became very much afraid of him. Indeed, they hid themselves here and there as rats hide themselves from snakes. Purport: when the government is very weak, rogues and thieves flourish. Similarly, when the government is very strong, all the thieves and rogues disappear or hide themselves. Of course, Vina was not a very good king, but he was known to be cruel and severe. Thus, the state at least became freed from thieves and rogues. Om Gyanantimirindasya Gyananjana Shalikaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I'm just thinking that King Vena, although he was uncontrolled and cruel, I suppose he possessed a different type of evilness, which definitely frightened the thieves and the rogues. Vina had his own brand of evilness, I suppose, and therefore all those citizens who were always hell-bent on breaking the law, and the criminals, they, soft or hardcore criminals, regardless, they were all perturbed once they found out that Vina is now the ruler. And it says that they hid themselves as rats hide themselves from snakes. I think it's quite interesting that two animals that are very unliked, rats and snakes, for different reasons, they're not all cute and fuzzy, I suppose, to the people, have been mentioned here. We know that, well, snakes are known for their enviousness, and rats are just generally not very liked by people. But regardless, even though Vina was a tyrant king, I suppose one side effect that could be looked upon as positive was that the unlawful citizens would be petrified of him, and so hopefully the state would have little to no criminal activity, at least in that aspect. Of course, the downside of all of this and having him as the ruler would be that the law-abiding citizens may have some relief from decreased criminal activity, but the fact is that they know what lies in store for them by not having a Krishna-conscious king. They know that there's going to be lots of problems ahead for them in terms of how they could progress on the spiritual path, and what sort of facility and support the government, especially the king, would provide in that department. So we can see that things are sort of going to probably unravel by not having a pious Raj Rishi king, as the Brajas previously had. They had become accustomed to having kings that were like sages, the descendants of Dhruva Maharaja, and now they're going to see, I think, something opposite of what they had been used to and what they'd enjoyed. Hare Krishna.
Atyugra Shasana, exceedingly strong, ugra, severe, exceedingly severe in shasana, in imposing discipline or punishment. That's on one side good, but then one has to be also then exceedingly benevolent to the citizens, to the law-abiding citizens. He's supposed to be the representative of Krishna. Vinashaya Chaduskritam, but Paritranaya Sadhunam. Not Vinashayam to everyone. Not destroying everyone's life. But the one side is wanted. We want a king who's strong. We want a king who's powerful. We want a king who gives not an inch to the disruptors of peace and prosperity for the kingdom. We want that kind of a king, but on the other side, he has to be benevolent. He has to be affectionate to the citizens. He has to be concerned with their welfare, and that means he has to be Krishna conscious. So the one without the other is going to be unbearable. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. We have time for one more verse, I believe, text 4. Ross Prabhu, are you able to read?
Yes, Prabhu.
We have a comment from Praveen Krishna. He says, my uncle shared to me how around 40 years ago in a monarchical kingdom, there was once a public execution of a thief where his offenses were proclaimed and then his hand cut off.
Yeah, Prabhupada cites that in Jaipur, that was until fairly recently, it seemed, when Prabhupada was writing. That was expected. The king was so strong, and even now there are states where they'll do that. In the Islamic states, they still may exact that kind of justice, and Prabhupada doesn't disapprove.
Praveen Krishna adds, the kingdom was free of thieves.
Yeah, no one wants to lose their hand.
Oh, Saraswati Mata says, we once had loss of electricity and looting became prevalent.
Yes.
All right, Ras Prabhu.
Sa aruda nirpastana punado sta vibhuti avamene mahabhagan stabda sambhavita svata. Translation. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all-powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. Purport. In this verse, the word asta vibhuti, meaning by 8 opulences, is very important. The king is supposed to possess 8 kinds of opulences. By dint of mystic yoga practice, kings generally acquired these 8 opulences. These kings were called Rajarsis, kings who were also great sages. By practicing mystic yoga, a Rajarsi could become smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, and could get whatever he desired. A Rajarsi could also create a kingdom, bring everyone under his control, and rule everyone. These were some of the opulences of a king. King Vena, however, was not practiced in yoga, but he became very proud of his royal position nonetheless. Because he was not very considerate, he began to misuse his power and insult great personalities.
Any thoughts to share, Ras Prabhu?
No, Prabhu.
Maharaj?
You'd like to read Vishwanath?
Yes. Interesting what he says here. The verse is rendered in this way. Vena, on ascending the throne, became proud because of the 8 powers, and proudly considered himself worthy of worship. Thus he disrespected exalted people. And his commentary, he became proud because of the 8 powers, means he became proud because of possessing wealth from the 8 directions. He ruled over the 7 continents. And then stabda means proud. He boasted that he himself was a warrior and scholar.
Oh, this is the demonic quality. Dampo, Darpo, Bhimanascha. Pride is the beginning of ignorance and, well, downfall. So that we find here. He was, yes, nothing really to add here. He began to, what happened. He became proud, and then he began to insult great souls.
Mm.
That's the beginning of
That's the beginning of downfall.
total downfall.
Insulting the great personalities.
Yeah. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Prabhin Krishna Prabhu offers Ayu Shriyam Yasho Dharmang Lokan Ashishya Evacha Hanti Shreyangsi Sarvani Pungso Mahad Atikramaha. When one mistreats great souls, his lifespan, opulence, reputation, religion, possessions, and good fortune are all destroyed.
Where is this verse from?
Canto 10, he says.
Nice.
Thank you. Unless there are further, oh wait, there is further. Radhesha Prabhu says, I read this earlier today regarding pride. Bilvamangala Thakur said, my dear Krishna, you are leaving me, forcibly getting out of my clutches, but I shall be impressed by your strength only when you can go forcibly from the core of my heart. This is an instance of feeling pride in ecstatic love for Krishna. Some good pride, he says.
Mm.
That from Nectar of Devotion?
Yes.
On the spiritual platform, pride becomes an opulence.
Hare Krishna. And Saraswati Mata asks, how were the ministers wiser than the sages in their foresight?
It appears that they were the ones on the ground. They knew what kind of king it was. One might think that the sages had theoretical knowledge, sort of abstract knowledge. All right, this is a good strategy. This person's gone, this person goes in, maybe a little heavy, but still got to have a king. So they were working on principles, on sound principles. But the sages were the ones on the ground. They knew what kind of king this was. Another angle of vision is ministers are generally a class of thieves also. They line their pockets, and therefore it's an instruction, and I forget whether it's Dharma Shastra or it's Janakya, that the one duty of the king is to keep his ministers in check.
Mm.
Because the ministers, given free rein, they'll plunder the citizens too. So without the king, you're at the mercy of the ministers. And with the king, the ministers have to be scrupulous. They can't enrich themselves unlimitedly at the expense of the citizens. They're held in check by the king. Now with Vena in charge, they could foresee that they wouldn't have an inch. They wouldn't have an inch. So that's another way of looking. They could see that the kingdom was going to be suffering. Another point of view, they could see that their own personal interests would be damaged. After all, they're ministers, not sages.
Could one also say that perhaps in this instance, the sages might have foreseen the appearance of Maharaj Prithu, even though that's not explicitly stated here?
Yeah, one might think that. Trikalagya.
And Saraswati Mata asks,
willing to cause trouble for the sake of ushering in great activities by the Lord.
right. We have a couple chats. We do need to stop for kirtan. Prabhin Krishna Prabhu says later the sages would themselves rectify the situation.
Mm.
And so Saraswati Mata asks, so desperation generated a wrong decision?
That sometimes happens. We don't see a good option, so we choose, as we say, the lesser of two evils, or you do what you can. And then all right, let's try it and see what happens, or let's do it because there's no other options. But then when it became intolerable, and in one sense, it was an opportunity. Vena could have done better, but it was inevitable. So yes, they might have foreseen. That's also, although not mentioned, possible.
Hare Krishna. Radhesha Prabhu, could you perhaps lead us in our closing kirtan?
Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtotra Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Kaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. वृंदावन धाम की जाए, मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जाए, जमुना माया की जाए, गंगा देवी की जाए, भक्ति देवी की जाए, तुलसी महारानी की जाए, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जाए. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees.
Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Radhesh Prabhu. Thank you, everyone, so much for your participation. Thank you, Maharaj, for being with us. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare.